Put the necklace on the table, Maya Brooks said as 200 guests fell silent. Cassandra Voss laughed and called her a maid, desperate to save her job. Then she tore off her $5 million diamond necklace and dared Maya to prove her accusation. With Julian Ward watching, Maya struck the hollow pendant once with a jeweler's mallet. Several small diamonds skipped across the velvet, and a tiny camera, microphone, battery, and transmitter dropped into the light. Cassandra stopped smiling, but before security could reach her, Julian's phone rang. The secret bid recorded by that necklace had already been sent to his rival, and the biggest deal of his career closed in 43 minutes. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you are watching from, and subscribe if you believe honest workers deserve to be heard before they are blamed. For 3 weeks, billionaire Julian Ward had been losing deals he should have won. His company built office towers, shopping centers, and large housing projects across several states. The problem was not that his rivals were smarter. They were learning his numbers before important negotiations. Twice, a competing company changed its offer only hours after Julian had discussed a private bid inside his mansion. The third time, the rival came within a few $1,000s of a figure known to only 6 people. Julian stopped holding business calls in public, changed passwords, replaced laptops, and ordered a full security review. Nothing helped. Every leak pointed back to the same place, his own home. David Cole, Julian's security chief, took the problem personally. He had protected the Ward family for 8 years and had never faced anything like it. The mansion's network showed no clear break-in, office computers were clean, no hidden devices had been found in the study, library, or dining room where the meetings took place. That left the people who moved through those rooms every day, housekeepers, servers, gardeners, and maintenance workers, were questioned one by one. Most had worked for Julian for years, but David could not ignore the pattern. Cassandra Voss, Julian's fiancée, urged him to act before their engagement gala. She spoke calmly, almost kindly. "You cannot risk another bid because you are afraid of hurting feelings," she told Julian. She suggested dismissing the maids and replacing the household staff after the gala. Julian hated the idea, but after losing millions in 3 deals, even loyalty had begun to feel like a risk. Maya Brooks heard nothing about the proposed dismissals at first. She had worked in the mansion for 4 years and was known for moving quietly, remembering details, and staying out of private conversations. Her lavender maid uniform made people assume she knew little about electronics, but her older brother Andre had spent most of his life repairing alarm systems, home cameras, door sensors, and small surveillance devices. When Maya was younger, she often sat at his workbench after school, sorting screws and cables, while he explained why a bad connection caused noise, or why a tiny transmitter could hide inside something ordinary. She never became a technician, and she never pretended to be one. Still, she knew enough to notice when an object behaved strangely. One Tuesday afternoon, while serving coffee during a private meeting, she saw a cold blue glint inside the large diamond pendant hanging at Cassandra's throat. It appeared only when Cassandra turned toward Julian's papers. Maya dismissed it at first as light from the windows. The necklace was new, an expensive piece Cassandra said had been made in Paris for the engagement gala. Its center pendant was wider than the rest of the design, with a cluster of small diamonds around a polished white stone. The next day, Maya saw the same tiny blue reflection in the library. Cassandra was standing behind Julian while he reviewed a construction bid with David. When Cassandra turned toward the fireplace, the glint disappeared. When she faced the documents again, it returned from the lower edge of the pendant. Then, as Cassandra reached behind her neck and closed the clasp after adjusting it, Maya heard a faint electronic chirp. It lasted less than a second. No one else reacted. Maya carried the coffee tray out of the room, but the sound followed her thoughts all afternoon. Jewelry should not make the same kind of startup tone she had heard hundreds of times at Andre's repair bench. That evening, Maya told Andre what she had noticed. He did not laugh, but he warned her not to jump to conclusions. Some modern jewelry used tiny lights for display cases, and nearby phones or smartwatches could create strange signals. Seeing a glint is not proof of anything. he said. Maya agreed. She was not accusing Cassandra. She only wanted to know whether the mansion still contained an unknown transmitter. Andre lent her a small handheld radio frequency detector, the kind he used when checking homes for faulty wireless equipment. The next morning, Maya went straight to David before turning it on. She explained where it came from and asked permission to test only the common rooms. David was skeptical, but after weeks of failed searches, he agreed to stand beside her. They checked the study, library, dining room, and hallway. The detector gave weak, normal readings from routers and security sensors, but nothing unusual. David looked almost relieved. Then Cassandra walked through the library wearing the diamond necklace. The detector gave a sharp pulse. Maya lowered it, waited, and tried again. The signal remained. Cassandra stopped near the doorway to answer a call. The reading strengthened. She crossed toward the windows, and the signal moved with her. When she left the room, it faded almost completely. David's expression changed, but Maya asked him not to confront her. They still did not know whether the necklace caused the reading or whether Cassandra carried another wireless device in her purse or phone. David agreed. Over the next 2 days, they repeated the test without telling anyone else. When Cassandra wore a different necklace, the strange signal was gone. When she wore the diamond pendant, it returned. Once, Maya watched Cassandra remove the necklace before going upstairs. The signal stopped at the exact moment the clasp opened. When she fastened it again 20 minutes later, the pulse came back. That was no longer a coincidence, but it still was not enough to prove what the pendant contained. Meanwhile, Julian's company prepared its largest bid of the year, a commercial redevelopment project worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Only a small team knew the final number. Julian decided the last discussion would happen at home because the mansion was already under tight security for the engagement gala. Cassandra insisted on attending, saying she wanted to understand why the recent losses had upset him so badly. David objected, but Julian saw no reason to exclude the woman he planned to marry. Maya served water during the meeting and kept her attention on her work. Cassandra sat close to Julian, the pendant resting high against her dark dress. Each time someone mentioned a figure, Cassandra turned slightly toward the speaker. Maya noticed the same tiny glass-like opening beneath the pendant's lower edge. Later, she checked the RF detector with David in the corridor. The pattern showed several short bursts during the meeting, each one separated by silence, as if the device were sending information only when sound was present. David finally admitted they might be looking at something serious. He told Maya he would bring in an outside electronics specialist the next morning and asked her to keep quiet until then. Maya agreed, but Cassandra had already begun watching her. Near midnight, Maya returned a tray to the pantry and found Cassandra standing at the end of the service hall. Her expression was pleasant, but her eyes dropped to the small detector partly visible inside Maya's apron pocket. "What is that?" she asked. Maya answered that it belonged to David and was being used for a security check. Cassandra smiled and said nothing more. The next morning, before the specialist arrived, David called Maya into the staff office. A copied confidential contract had been found inside a drawer in Maya's room. It contained the same private figures that had leaked from Julian's company. Cassandra stood beside Julian when the paper was placed on the desk, and for the first time, the evidence seemed to point directly at Maya. David Cole did not accuse Maya in front of the staff. He closed the office door, placed the copied contract on the desk, and asked how it had reached her room. Maya recognized the project name from the meeting she had served the night before, but she had never seen the full contract. Julian stood near the window, angry and tired. Cassandra remained beside him, saying little now that the paper seemed to speak for itself. David explained that it had been found inside a drawer beneath Maya's folded sweaters during a security search after the latest leak. Maya said someone must have planted it. Cassandra answered, "That is what anyone would say." Julian stopped her and told David to verify the document before deciding anything. Maya was placed on paid suspension and asked to leave the mansion. As she walked out, she understood the danger had changed. Someone was no longer only listening to Julian. Someone was building a case against her. Maya went straight to Andre's repair shop. She told him about the contract, the signal, and Cassandra seeing the detector in her apron pocket the night before. Andre asked how quickly someone could have planted the paper after realizing Maya was suspicious. Maya remembered Cassandra in the service hall close to midnight. The contract was found early the next morning. Maya asked David to send her a legal copy of the document rather than the original. He agreed, because she was still part of the review. Andre enlarged the footer and pointed to a small revision code. Maya had seen the earlier cover sheet during the meeting, only because it faced upward while she poured water. The planted copy carried a later revision number. That did not clear her yet, but it gave David something exact to check. The company's document system showed the revision was created at 8:42 that evening, almost 3 hours after Maya clocked out and left for Andre's birthday dinner. The estate gate camera showed her car leaving at 5:51, and a restaurant receipt placed her across town until nearly 10. More important, the newer contract had been printed at 10:17 p.m. from the guest office printer upstairs. David reviewed the hallway cameras. A large flower display being installed for the gala blocked the printer doorway for several minutes, so no camera clearly showed who entered. Cassandra had been upstairs during that period. It still did not prove she printed the contract, but Maya could not have stolen that exact version during the meeting. The strongest evidence against her had just developed a serious crack. Julian asked Maya to return for a private meeting the next afternoon. David showed him the revision history and gate records. Cassandra quickly suggested Maya might have an accomplice who printed the document later. David said that was possible, but there was no evidence for it. Then he revealed something he had not told Cassandra before. The RF logs showed the strange signal appearing when she wore the diamond necklace and disappearing when she removed it. Cassandra laughed and held up her phone. "Then test that. Test my watch, too." As she spoke, she opened the necklace clasp. The detector went quiet almost at once. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Julian asked her to close it again. She hesitated, then did. The signal returned. It was the first demonstration Cassandra could not explain with a missing contract or a careless employee. David wanted an independent technician to inspect the necklace, but Cassandra refused to hand over a $5 million piece of jewelry because of what she called a maid's hobby equipment. Julian could not simply take property that belonged to her. He asked whether her jeweler could examine it. Cassandra said after the engagement gala, "Not before." Maya did not push. Andre had warned her that an RF detector could show a transmission, but could not prove whether it carried sound, video, or something harmless. David therefore brought in a calibrated monitor and compared the signal with earlier meeting times. The pattern was troubling. Short bursts appeared during 2 discussions tied to leaked bids. Another matched a dinner when Julian mentioned a land purchase that reached arrival the next morning. The signal was strongest whenever Cassandra sat close to Julian's documents. But they still needed proof of what the pendant actually contained. Cassandra became more careful after that meeting. She stopped entering staff areas and stayed near Julian whenever business guests arrived. She also began talking about dismissing the household workers after the gala, calling it a fresh security structure. The staff understood what she meant. One maid had worked there 11 years. Another supported a husband recovering from a stroke. Maya could see fear spreading through people who had done nothing wrong. She also understood why Julian was worried. Another leaked bid could cost his company millions. The problem was where that fear had been pointed. If you believe a person should never be judged because their uniform makes them easy to blame, write "never judge" in the comments. Maya was no longer trying only to save her own job. She wanted proof strong enough to clear every worker Cassandra had pushed under suspicion. The day before the gala, David brought in an independent security technician while Cassandra was away. They tested the study, library, dining room, routers, smart speakers, alarm sensors, and guest network. Nothing permanent matched Maya's readings. When Cassandra returned wearing the pendant, the same narrowband signal appeared again. The technician explained that the source could be a camera, microphone, tracker, or another small transmitter, but no one could say which without examining the jewelry. Julian asked Cassandra once more to allow a private inspection. She refused and accused Maya of inventing a new story because the planted contract had failed to destroy her. Her anger remained controlled. But Maya noticed something. Cassandra was no longer asking why the signal existed. She was only arguing that nobody had the right to look inside. By early evening, the mansion filled with caterers, musicians, investors, and television crews preparing for the engagement gala. David restored Maya's work access under his direct supervision because the evidence against her had fallen apart. Then Julian's business team arrived with the sealed numbers for the largest property bid his company had prepared that year. The offer had to be submitted before midnight. Maya stood in the service corridor with the detector hidden beneath a folded towel as Cassandra crossed the ballroom wearing the diamond necklace. The reading jumped higher than Maya had ever seen it. Cassandra stopped beside Julian just as he opened the final bid folder. The signal changed from short pulses to one steady transmission. David stared at the display, then at the clock. Whatever was hidden inside Cassandra's necklace was no longer waiting for another private conversation. It was transmitting Julian's most important bid right now. The engagement gala had already begun when David Cole asked Julian Ward to step into the library. Music drifted from the ballroom, where 200 guests gathered beneath crystal chandeliers. Cassandra stood near the center of the room in a dark blue evening gown, the $5 million diamond necklace bright against her throat. Maya remained in the service corridor with the detector hidden beneath a folded napkin. The reading stayed high. David showed Julian the live signal and explained that it had become continuous the moment Cassandra moved beside the final bid folder. Julian wanted to confront her at once, but David stopped him. If the pendant was transmitting, an argument would only warn whoever was receiving it. They needed one clean demonstration in front of witnesses. Julian looked toward the ballroom and understood what that meant. In less than an hour, he would have to decide whether to trust the woman he planned to marry or the maid his own household had nearly blamed. David arranged the test around the charity jewelry display already planned for the gala. A local jeweler had brought several donated pieces for appraisal, along with magnifying lamps, padded trays, and a small jeweler's mallet used for demonstration work on empty settings. Julian asked the jeweler, Mr. Nolan, to remain nearby and say only what he could personally verify. Then David quietly disabled the mansion's guest Wi-Fi so ordinary phones would create less interference. Cassandra continued greeting donors, unaware of the change. Maya watched the detector. The signal did not disappear. It stayed narrow and steady, proving it was not coming through the guest network. When Cassandra crossed the ballroom to speak with Julian, the signal strengthened again. Mr. Nolan glanced at the screen, then at the necklace. "Something active is very close to her," he said. That was still not proof of a camera, but it was enough to make Julian ask Cassandra to join them at the jewelry table. Cassandra came over smiling until she saw Maya standing beside David. Julian kept his voice calm. He told her an unexplained transmitter appeared whenever she wore the necklace and stopped whenever the clasp opened. Cassandra said the detector was unreliable. David handed it to Mr. Nolan, who repeated the test himself. Cassandra opened the clasp. The signal dropped. She closed it. The signal returned. Nearby guests began to watch. Cassandra's smile hardened. She said the necklace contained no electronics and accused Maya of staging the entire thing because the contract planted in her room had failed to get her fired. Maya did not answer the insult. She pointed instead to the underside of the pendant, where a tiny dark opening sat between two diamond settings. Mr. Nolan examined it through a magnifier. He could not identify it, but he said it was not part of the visible stone setting. Julian asked Cassandra to allow a professional inspection. She refused. The refusal drew more attention than the detector had. Cassandra looked around at the cameras, investors, and donors, then changed tactics. She removed the necklace herself and dropped it onto the padded black velvet tray. "Fine," she said. "If your maid thinks there is a camera inside it, let her prove it." Julian told her no one would damage the piece without knowing what they were doing. Mr. Nolan turned the pendant over and examined the rear casing. He explained that the diamonds themselves were mounted around a hollow decorative center. A controlled strike to the thin backplate could open that center without hitting the main stones, though the setting might be damaged. Cassandra folded her arms and told Julian to stop protecting Maya from being exposed as a liar. "Break it," she said. Julian looked at Maya. "Only if you are certain enough to stand behind what you found." Maya thought about the moving signal, the clasp, the planted contract, and the weeks of leaks. "I am." Mr. Nolan placed the necklace flat on the padded table and moved the expensive stones away from the edge. He handed Maya the small jeweler's mallet and showed her exactly where the hollow backplate was thinnest. The room had gone quiet enough for Maya to hear a camera lens adjust behind her. Cassandra stood opposite the table, chin lifted, but her fingers were pressed hard against the edge. Maya gave the pendant one controlled strike. The thin rear plate split along a seam. 2 tiny diamonds from the outer setting skipped across the velvet, not across the floor. Then something black and metallic dropped from the open center. Maya set the mallet down. Mr. Nolan used tweezers to lift out a lens no wider than a shirt button. Beside it were a miniature microphone, a transmitter board, a flat battery, and a short antenna built into the pendant frame. Cassandra stared at the pieces as though they belonged to someone else. Then she said the jeweler who made the necklace must have hidden them there. David told everyone not to touch the table and called the police liaison, already assigned to gala security. Julian did not shout. He simply asked Cassandra who had given her the necklace. She answered that it came through a private consultant who arranged luxury purchases for her. Maya recognized the phrase. Cassandra had used the same description for Marcus Dane, a man who had attended 2 dinners at the mansion during the weeks when bids leaked. David checked the gala list. Marcus was there that night as Cassandra's guest. His listed occupation said business consultant. Julian's general counsel knew the name for another reason. Marcus was a senior executive at Northbridge Development, the rival company that had beaten Ward Group on 2 of the leaked bids. David switched the detector to directional mode and followed the strongest matching signal away from the ballroom. Maya stayed with Julian while security moved through the side hall and toward the private parking area. The signal led outside, where one of Cassandra's guest vehicles sat near the service drive. It was registered to a company used by Marcus. David did not open it. He photographed the plate, secured the area, and requested police authority before any search. Back inside, Marcus was no longer at his table. A camera near the east entrance showed him leaving the mansion 3 minutes after the necklace broke open. Cassandra said that proved nothing. Julian's counsel said the receiver and recording history still had to be tied legally to Cassandra and Marcus. Then Julian's chief financial officer hurried into the ballroom carrying his phone. He had just received an automated alert from the bidding system. The final Ward Group offer had been accessed from an unauthorized external account 17 minutes earlier. The access time matched the period when Cassandra stood beside Julian, wearing the transmitting necklace. Worse, Northbridge had not yet submitted its competing offer. The sealed bidding window closed at midnight, and there were only 43 minutes left. If Marcus had already received Julian's number, he could undercut it by the smallest amount and take the largest project Ward Group had pursued in years. Julian looked from the broken necklace to Cassandra. For the first time that evening, she seemed less afraid of the camera on the table than of the clock above the ballroom doors. David's voice came through his radio from the parking area. "We found the signal source, but Marcus is gone." Julian checked the time again. They had exposed the spy device, but the stolen bid was already in someone else's hands, and the deal would close in 43 minutes. Julian Ward did not waste a second arguing with Cassandra. He moved with David Cole and his chief financial officer into the library, where the final bid documents had been prepared. The company's lawyers confirmed that the rules still allowed Ward Group to withdraw the compromised draft and replace it before midnight, as long as the revised offer was complete and properly signed. Julian could not simply change the number at random. The project had to remain financially sound. His team began recalculating while David preserved the broken necklace, RF logs, and gala video. Maya stayed nearby because she could explain exactly when the transmissions had appeared. Then David received a message from the officers outside. Marcus Dane's car had been secured, but no search would happen without proper authority. The biggest question remained unanswered. Had the stolen bid already reached Northbridge? The first answer came from the bidding portal. Ward Group's earlier draft had been viewed through an unauthorized external account, but the system could not identify the person behind it. Julian's lawyers reported the suspected theft to the project administrator, who agreed to preserve all access records and confirmed Ward Group could still submit a replacement before the deadline. No extra time would be granted. Julian's team rebuilt the offer using a backup financing plan they had already prepared weeks earlier, so the new bid remained legitimate. At 11:38 p.m., with 22 minutes left, the revised package was nearly ready. Then the chief financial officer noticed something troubling. One cost page had been opened from Julian's home network only minutes earlier, after Cassandra's necklace had already been broken. David checked every device still connected to the mansion. Cassandra's phone was with officers, and Marcus had left, but a guest tablet registered to Marcus remained on a side table near the East Hall. Officers photographed it and preserved its network state while legal authority for a search was requested. The tablet was still connected to a small receiver hidden inside a leather folio. Activity records showed repeated connections during earlier dinners and business meetings. Maya recognized the dates immediately. They matched several nights when Cassandra had worn the diamond necklace, and Julian later lost a bid. The pendant had not been used for one reckless night. Someone had been listening for weeks. At 11:47, Julian signed the revised bid, and his chief financial officer submitted it through the official portal, with 13 minutes remaining. Ward Group was back in the competition, but Northbridge could still use the stolen information. The project administrator placed both companies' access records under preservation for review. Meanwhile, officers obtained authority to search Marcus's car after presenting the RF logs, guest records, and connection between Marcus and the receiver. Inside the locked trunk, they found a hard equipment case containing another receiver, a laptop, and several storage drives. Every item was photographed and logged before removal. One drive contained date folders matching Julian's leaked negotiations. What Maya had found inside the necklace was only the front end of a much larger system. Cassandra tried to distance herself from Marcus. She said he had arranged the necklace as a gift and could have altered it without her knowledge. Investigators did not dismiss that claim until the records contradicted it. The original jeweler confirmed the necklace had left his workshop with no electronics inside. A later modification had been arranged through a company tied to Marcus, and Cassandra had reimbursed the payment herself. Messages recovered under warrant went further. Cassandra told Marcus which nights Julian would discuss bids and where the meetings would happen. In one exchange, she wrote that the staff would take the blame if the device was ever discovered. Another message asked whether the copied contract had been placed where security would find it. Maya had been framed because Cassandra believed a maid would be easier to accuse than a future wife. Northbridge submitted its final bid at 11:56 p.m. 4 minutes later, the window closed. No winner was announced that night. Because of the reported breach, both companies' submissions and access records went to independent review. Investigators later confirmed that Marcus had received Julian's original number through the necklace system before Northbridge prepared its final offer. Northbridge suspended Marcus and cooperated with the inquiry. There was no proof that its board had approved the spying, so the case focused on Marcus and Cassandra. Weeks of archived audio, photographs of documents, payments, and the planted contract created a strong chain of evidence. Cassandra and Marcus later faced charges tied to unlawful surveillance, theft of confidential business information, conspiracy, and the attempt to frame Maya. The project was rebid under new safeguards, so no bidder could benefit from the stolen figures. Ward Group was allowed to compete again, but no result was guaranteed. Several days later, Julian gathered the household staff in the ballroom. The gala decorations were gone, and the broken necklace was now evidence. Julian admitted that fear had made him too willing to suspect the people with the least power in the house. David also accepted responsibility for allowing suspicion to settle on employees before the facts were complete. Julian restored every missed hour of pay, covered independent legal advice for workers who had been questioned, and changed the mansion's security rules. Employee rooms could no longer be searched without documented cause and a second authorized witness. Job title alone would never be treated as proof. Maya accepted the apology, but she did not ask for her old life back. When Julian offered her a large personal reward, she thanked him and refused it. Instead, Maya asked whether he would support professional training only if the qualification belonged to her and did not tie her to Ward Group. Julian agreed. Through an independent electronic security company, she entered a paid certification program covering lawful camera detection, RF testing, access systems, and evidence handling. Andre smiled the first time she returned to his repair shop, carrying her new textbooks. 6 months later, Maya was working as a junior security technician. On one of her first inspections, she found an unauthorized transmitter hidden inside a conference room charger, documented it correctly, and called her supervisor. The faint signal reminded her of Cassandra's necklace, but everything else had changed. No one saw a maid who had wandered too close to important business. They saw a trained professional doing her job. Maya had not been rescued by Julian's money or rewarded with romance. She had taken the skill people underestimated and built a future from it. If stories about dignity, truth, and quiet courage mean something to you, please subscribe and join us for the next one.